Minutes from now, the National Transportation Safety Board will hold its final meeting in East Palestine, Ohio, on the 2023 train derailment that scattered toxic materials into the air and the water. The group will then release a final report of its findings and recommendations to prevent future incidents. And this comes as the Department of Transportation released a new rule yesterday on railroad safety. So for more on this, we want to bring in Politico's transportation reporter, Chris Marquette. Thanks for joining us. I find this very interesting and kind of very respectful that the Department of Transportation is having a meeting with the people who live in East Palestine before they release their report. I just feel like it's the least they could do is sort of talk to them face to face. So before we get to today's meeting, the DOT announced a new rule for freight railroads carrying hazardous materials. What does this rule do?
Yeah, thanks for having me. So on Monday, the Biden administration unveiled a rule that would make railroads proactively give first responders real-time information about rail hazmat shipments and incidents involving hazardous materials. So railroads would need to send a notification to a 911 call center or through an emergency responder app, such as one by the name of Ask Rail. And that rule, came as the National Transportation Safety Board, is on the ground in East Palestine. They were there yesterday for community meetings last night, and then as you alluded to this morning, we have the board hearing, and that DOT rule is a response to what happened in East Palestine in February of 2023, and it mandates that all railroads generate the following information for shipments containing hazardous materials, which includes the quantity and position of the materials on the train, where the train started and where it's going, emergency response information, and a designated emergency point of contact for the railroad. And in the announcement, the deputy administrator of the agency said, we heard firsthand from firefighters that we're responding to the Norfolk Southern derailment in East Palestine, that they and other first responders need hazardous materials information as soon as the incident occurs. So that was a long awaited rule and an action by the Department of Transportation just ahead of this very, very important board meeting that we have this morning.
Yeah, totally. Because as I kind of recall, it seemed like there was a lag time where people weren't sure what was on this train, what sort of reaction it would have to fire or water or anything. Let's talk about this meeting that's coming up, though. What's on the agenda?
Yeah, so today the board is going to hear from its investigators, vote on what they believe caused the derailment, and then make recommendations for preventing another such catastrophe. So at the end of the meeting, an executive summary of the final report will be available, and then the final report won't be published until weeks later. So I think a major component to kind of think about for folks out there is, we don't know what they're going to find, but I think, it will, move the ball forward in terms of, potentially more insight into what happened with the vent and burn decision. And then I think another component, especially what we're watching for on Capitol Hill, is there were several pieces of legislation that were introduced right after the catastrophe. A bipartisan rail safety bill by Ohio Senators Sherrod Brown and J.D. Vance. That's been waiting for Senate floor time for months. There was a flare of movement earlier this month, but nothing ultimately happened on that. And then there's two House bills that are also languishing, bipartisan bills. One by Amelia Sykes, who represents Ohio, and it would increase maximum penalties for rail safety violations, require railroads to provide notification to state emergency response entities. And then there's another one by Chris DeLuzio, who's from Pennsylvania, that just across the border from where the derailment happened, and Nick LaLota from New York, that would act as a companion to the Vance-Brown Senate bill. And a lot of members, particularly on the Republican side, like House Transportation Chair Sam Graves, said, hey, we need to wait and see this NTSB report come out, and then we need to make a decision on legislation. We don't need to legislate from emotion in the immediate aftermath. So it'll be interesting to see number one, if these bills that I mentioned get some more traction in terms of whether or not leadership will make some time on the floor for them,
Yeah.
and whether or not they'll get a vote. And also, we'll see what Sam Graves chairs the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, and see whether he will have an appetite to go forward with legislation now that we do have this NTSB report in this hearing.
Yeah, let's get a move on it. Chris, thank you very much.